Well, with that said, good morning. My name is John Visitation, and I bring with me the love of Christ to each and every one of you this day. I feel like I need to introduce myself in many ways, shapes, or forms, but first let me say that my full name is Jonathan Dana Kenji Visitation. When I was 5, I actually had to start from the left side of the page so that it would end on the right side of the page. And if you're not quite sure what to call me, you can call me any of those names, John, Jonathan, Jay, JV, V, just whatever you feel comfortable. I'll probably turn my head. Many of you who have youth who've attended junior high camp or Asian camp in the last 10 years, you may know who I am. Your youth probably do know who I am. And I've been part of those camping ministries for a very, very long time. I am the new minister of emerging ministries and technology, and I'll get back to you about this and unpack it a little at the end of my message. I am currently seeing someone, and not all of you know who she is. Her name's Mika. We've been together for 5 years, and since she's attended CSU Fullerton down south. And I promise you, she was the first one jumping up and down since I made the announcement that I will be moving up north to work here at this church. Some of the hobbies that I like doing outside of the church and technology is that I do like to fish. Whenever I have free time, I try to go fishing as much as possible. But I also like to cook. And yes, this is bacon fried rice with a Spam heart. The reason I like to cook so much is because I like to eat so much. I think the first 2 things that you'll get to know about me very quickly is that I do have a distinctive laugh. And I am a little bit on the goofy side. More than often, you'll see both at the same time. When Reverend Keith asked me to give today's message, I thought it would be fitting to explain a little bit of who I am and what exactly got me here to Wesley United Methodist. And so today I wanted to share with you how God has been working in my life. So let me introduce you to the first chapter of my life, my family. This is my mom, right there. Carol Lori Visitation. She grew up in Fresno, California, and is a retired resource specialist teacher. She currently helps teaching severely disabled children by doing home visits. She's Sansei, 3rd generation Japanese American. My dad's name is Jaime Visitation. I'm going to make sure that I know that one's my dad. He's a 2nd generation Filipino American who grew up in Hawaii. More specifically, he grew up on the island of Kauai on the west side. He moved to California in 1967, became a police officer, and served for 33 years before retiring in 2005. They both met in college and settled down on my grandparents' vineyard that my mom grew up on. I do have one sister named Sherry, who is married to a good man named Dante, and they have two children. One that you'll see here, Dominic, and the other one, Derek. Now, for me, I grew up on the same 90 acres of vineyards in Fresno as my grandfather and mother did. And to give you an idea of the amount of land 90 acres is, imagine the church, Wesley United Methodist with a parking lot, and you take the hardware store in the back and the 2 parking lots next to it, and it would be equivalent to that yellow square. This is where I grew up. And for the most part, I think at least I had a normal childhood. I did well in high school, I played sports, I was a member of various clubs, and I played in the marching band. I graduated high school in 2002, and then attended Fresno State University for my undergrad. And then I graduated in 2006 with a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. It was in undergrad where I began to grow in my faith. I began to help out with my youth group and attended summer camps for the first time, and I've been participating with it ever since. It was also during college where I experienced the passing of both my grandmothers, Elena Visitation and Fumi Mori. It was really hard for me of the passing of Grandma Fumi, because she was the one who lived with us, and she was the one who took care of me as a child. She was one of the most influential persons in my life and exemplified the gospel for me. She passed away in 2005. In 2006, I moved to Los Angeles to attend UCLA's electrical engineering graduate program. Now, personally, it was a conflicting experience because I struggled with the culture clash of living in farmland areas where stores closed at 9 to a city that practically never went to sleep. I struggled with the graduate program because it was so fast-paced and demanding. And what made it so conflicting was that I did so well in high school and at Fresno State. I kept asking God, why is this happening? And if it wasn't for the church friends I had who lived in Southern California, I probably would have left for Fresno 6 months after I started. So I stuck it out for that year. But to be honest, I was miserable, frustrated, conflicted, and lost. It was after my first year at UCLA that Reverend Keith back at UJCC asked me if I would ever consider going into ministry. At the time, I guess I was open to the idea, but I wasn't ready to leave engineering just yet. I just put in 5 years of my life into it. Reverend Keith offered me a position as a summer pastoral intern where I shadowed him on various pastoral items. For 10 weeks, I helped out with communion, participated in funeral services and regular church meetings, and just tried to immerse myself into the life of being a pastor. You would think it would scare a person off so easily. And if you knew me in another life, I was the kind of guy who didn't like public speaking. Didn't like to be even touched with a 10-foot pole. Didn't like to touch anyone for that matter. Instead, it pulled me out of my own comfort zone to do more and serve more. It showed me that I had the potential to do something more, and that idea in itself transformed my life. That summer, I began to understand that this potential, this transformation, was part of my calling in the ministry. And I realized that God was calling me to do something different. But I still had 1 more year to finish the engineering program at UCLA. I still wanted to make my family proud because there are so many engineers in the family. I wanted to make myself proud, as I've always wanted to go to UCLA since I was in junior high. So I tried to finish, but I struggled even more. By this time, I was meeting regularly with the local pastors at Faith United Methodist down south, Reverend Ken Sir, as well as Reverend Derek Nakano and Pastor Kite Choi. And in that year of struggling one more time at UCLA, I came to understand 3 major epiphanies. First, our callings towards God are always intentional, and our past prepares us for this specific moment in our lives. It's always intentional, always purposeful. Second, parents want the best for their children, but most of all, they want their children to be happy, and they want their children to live meaningful lives. Now, I have a fear of failure. I'm not going to lie to you about that. And my sense of failure was projected onto my parents. And it became my own fear. That my failure as a student reflected on them being bad parents. None of which was true at all, but led me to realize that they just want the best for me, like any parent does for their child. Third, my own personal goals and visions may not be what God has in store for me. I wrestled with this last epiphany, as well as the other 2 for a very long time, and I came to terms that computer engineering was not the final place that God was taking me. And by the following spring of 2008, I withdrew my enrollment at UCLA. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, and definitely not one of the easiest conversations to have with your mom and dad. But they finally understood after a while that I was moving towards a different goal. But where it might seem that I was jumping off a cliff into the unknown, I found myself caught in the good graces of Christ through the hands of those around me. And within a month of dropping out of UCLA, I was working at Faith United Methodist Church as a high school youth leader. In that same month, I applied and enrolled at Claremont School of Theology with a scholarship. I took it as an affirmation from God that I was heading in the right direction. And then over the next 5 years, I continued to work at Faith United Methodist Church while attending seminary, and eventually was a full-time staff member at the church. I graduated from Claremont in 2012, and by then I was overseeing the junior high, high school, and college-age ministries. I would go every summer to help co-lead these various youth mission teams in California, Louisiana, and Alabama, and it actually really became meaningful to my own life to serve those in need wherever I could. And at one time, I was in charge of organizing the leaders of 60 different ministries of the church to be more effective in their communication with the office. Towards the end of my service at Faith United Methodist Church, I began to help streamline the efficiency of the office staff administration by creating outlets for online technology and social media. I even taught a workshop to the prime timers about how to use an iPad. iPad sales went through the roof in Florence area. When I look back at that moment in 2008 when I dropped out of UCLA, I don't have any regrets. It's been a complete blessing and an incredible journey. But for a while after, I wondered for a long time why God wanted me to become an engineer before being called into the ministry. I was finally able to answer that question over the past few years. God had me go through such training to have the skills to be a pastor for the next generation, for the next few chapters of this church. After all, the goal for any engineer is to refine the system. Find ways to make it better. Learn how things operate. Learn from your mistakes. Try new things out and make it better in the long run. I realized very quickly that I became a spiritual engineer. Trying to see places in the church that we can grow and do better, whether that is a ministry or a project that we're working on, or just growing in our own faith. When I learned that I was going to be the minister of emerging ministries and technology, I knew that was what God called me here for. The new ministries that are on the horizon here at this church speak towards a new level of excitement and energy. And it makes me excited to see where the next new chapter for my own life is going to lead me, as well as this church. Now, I must say, I don't plan on creating huge ripples of change just yet. The last 4 days have been overwhelming, to say the very least. Right now, all I want to do is learn about your church. Our church. I want to get to know as many people as possible and learn what drives you to be part of this family. I want to know how Christ is moving in your ministries and in your own lives. I want to know in your own thoughts how we can move the church to the next new chapter. I think that will be enough, more than enough for my plate for the time being. But I want you to understand that my faith story is based upon the new chapters that are about to unfold here at this church. And I hope this comes with excitement. I hope this comes with the ability for you to find new ways to grow in your faith and serve God through serving those around you. Over these past few days, I said earlier that I felt overwhelmed, but also that I have felt reaffirmed in my calling to work here at this church. And I've already felt the support and love by many of you. And before I continue, I just want to say thank you so much for your generosity and hospitality. So with that, let me explain to you how I define myself as a minister of emerging ministries and technology. I hope to serve this church. I hope that I can help you grow in your faith in more than one way. I hope to make myself available, and I hope to grow in my own faith and leadership at the same time. I hope to try out new things, not with fear, but with excitement to show you all the potential of something amazing. Something amazing that God is doing in each and every one of you. I want to read the passage that Elise shared earlier from Romans 12, and I will read it from the verse prior. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. That is what God has done in my life. He transformed me from being a shy engineer who is afraid of public speaking to someone willing to serve Christ in any way imaginable. He transformed my life, and I am grateful for it. I'm grateful for my own faith story and the people who have supported me. I'm grateful for Reverend Keith, as well as Reverend Derek, Reverend Ken, and Pastor Key for mentoring me all these years. I'm grateful for my family and extended family and my faith family who've always stood beside me. I'm also grateful for Mika, who's always stood beside me, but it should be actually more like put up with me. I'm grateful for the past I've had and how it's shaped me. Most of all, I am grateful for how God has renewed my mind with a deeper purpose and clarity, so that I can look ahead to the new chapters of our lives. Grace and peace to you all.